You're in D.C., of course, for the IMF spring meetings. But before we discuss the land that is Washington, D.C., I want to start with your home, Greece, where last week the Bank of Greece lowered your growth outlook to 2.3%. That's still well above the average for Europe, but nonetheless, it's lower than the projected 2.5%. How much is the higher for longer interest rates in Europe weighing on the Greek economy, and how important is it that we get cuts from the ECB soon and in size?
Look, we are not isolated, of course. We are affected by international developments and European development. Especially in Greece, we have been affected by unprecedented natural disasters last year. However, I have to underline that our growth rate is 4-5 times higher than the Eurozone average. And this underlines the success, I think, of our policy mix, which is based on two pillars, fiscal prudence on the one hand and a business-friendly approach on the other. As you know, we had a very dramatic experience the last decade. It was something unprecedented for Greece, and I think that we have learned our lessons. This government is determined to continue the same path in order to attract more investments in Greece, to further reduce unemployment and so on.
And Minister, I mean, you have overseen this period of recovery. You say you've learned your lessons. But do you think the rest of the world has learned their lesson? The U.S. is on track for a $1.6 trillion deficit this year. Europe is looking for some sort of answer to the spending coming out of the U.S. China wants to do the same. Are you concerned about the trajectory of fiscal spend that this world is headed on?
You see, it wouldn't be a responsible stance to overlook all these developments and say that everything is okay. Of course, it is not the first time the world economy is facing difficulties and turbulences. However, we shouldn't neglect messages coming from various sides. Greece cannot change the history of the whole world. We can do our part, and this is our effort to learn, as I said, the lessons from the past and implement a common sense policy which already have tangible results. We have reduced unemployment in Greece in an unprecedented way. We have created many new jobs, and we are going to continue the same way because after the experience we had, this is our patriotic duty.
Yes, and Minister, I appreciate you saying we can't change the world, but the world impacts you. I know one of the big conversations at the IMF has been a strong dollar, and you have Secretary Yellen saying that she understands the plight that these other countries are going for, sort of de facto lending her hand to saying if you need to intervene, you can. Of course, Europe might face a weaker euro if they start to cut before the Fed. Is a weaker euro a problem? Or for you, for your country, a weaker euro promoting tourism, surely that's something you would welcome?
We had an interesting meeting with Secretary Yellen some months ago in Brussels in the Eurogroup meeting. We exchanged views and we have a good cooperation. We have to focus our efforts on Europe, on the policies we implement in Europe. I think the key word for us is competitiveness, regardless of the policies adopted here in Washington, D.C. Now there are some very interesting reports in Brussels focusing exactly on this issue, single market, competitiveness of Europe, and we try to have a constructive role in adapting the European policy to the new realities. Certainly, as far as Europe is concerned, we have to be more competitive in the near future.
Minister, how do you, though, straddle this idea that you need to be more competitive while keeping fiscal spend in line? Because part of the competitiveness is what you now face from America. And again, this huge fiscal burden that's building, but the economic strength that's come from it. How do you match that in competitiveness while keeping the fiscal restraints on?
Look, once again, I will not teach the United States or even the European Union the policies they should follow. We are a member state of the European Union. We try to have a constructive role there, having the lessons of the previous of the previous
Fair
decade.
Enough, Minister. Minister, let me ask you this then. In terms of another conversation that's very present in a U.S. election year is defense spending. Greece is one of the countries that has surpassed the 2% goal set by NATO, something Trump has been very critical of other NATO members not matching. We are in the midst of now two hot wars popping up in only the past few years. Are those criticisms, do they have a point, Minister? Do other NATO countries need to start spending more on defense?
Yeah. You see, as you may know, we spent 3% in defense expenditure. We are the second country as regards ranking in the European NATO countries after Poland. We have met the criteria set, and I think that all the member states should comply with the rules. This is the reason why we have an alliance. There are rules, and we have to comply with the rules. This is our message, and it is very simple.
What is the risk of non-compliance, Minister?
Anyway, we take seriously our experience in the past. Our country didn't comply with the rules of the European Union at the time, the monetary union. We were living beyond our means, and we paid for that. I think the reason why we have these alliances, be it the European Union or NATO, is for those alliances to have an added value. And in order for them to have the added value, the member states should follow the rules. It is very simple. And I think that given the turbulent period of time we are living, Russia's aggression in Ukraine and so on, I think that all the member states are getting this message, and I think that all the member states will do their part. This is what I wish, at least.
Minister, we're almost out of time, but before I let you go, I mentioned that a lot of the galvanizing of this mention had come from Trump. Do you think Europe is ready if there is a Trump 2.0? The American people will decide. Will not dictate. We cannot dictate. Of course, but do you think Europe will be ready for that?
I refer to the Europeans who will respect the decision of the American voters and will try to cooperate with the other side of the Atlantic. I believe, and I firmly believe really, that taking into account international turbulences, both the European Union and the United States are condemned, I would say, to cooperate. It wouldn't be a wise decision to ignore the modern challenges and proceed alone. Of course, there are different interests. I don't underestimate this aspect, but on the other hand, we have a lot in common, the same principles, and to some extent, the same interests. So we have to cooperate, and I think that we'll achieve this objective.